Oh my gosh.
Where is that? I'm
That's in
lost.
LA. That's in LA.
But I mean, it wasn't Dr. Phil.
It was on no, but Dr. Phil was interviewing Tom Homan.
Oh, okay.
I thought
Yeah.
eventually I'd probably send some of that so people could see why, what that they're trying to do.
Oh, you look at the stuff just in LA with all their flags and everything, and how they're just trashing stuff. And people are like, don't embarrass. That lady's gonna go, where?
Yeah.
She's just a mess. And Gavin,
Yeah, and they're burning the American flags. They're holding up the Mexican flags. So go back to Mexico if you love that flag so much.
but they're
Exactly.
they're legal here. They're illegal, but it's okay that they're here. And I'm like, it
No,
is.
it's
So
and
Trump
they
is
obviously want to go back to Mexico because they keep waving that flag and are burning ours. So they don't really want to be here.
and they say
Yeah,
bad
they
things.
want us to be here, but they want it to become part of Mexico, not the United States.
Yeah, the one
Yeah.
guy said that. The one guy from Mexico, one of the politicians in Mexico said, "We're going to reinstitute the 1830 boundaries
Oh my gosh.
before Polk bought or they had the Mexican War."
Yeah.
Go ahead, let them have it.
Yeah.
You guys can all live in Mexico.
Okay, well, I have it here if we're in the right place. So I will share it and we can start.
Okay.
Okay, you got it on the big screen. There you go. Hey, maybe I can read that better. Let's pray. Blessed are you, Yahuwah, our Elohim, creator of the universe. Thank you for this day, for the many blessings, for bringing us together. Be with Violet and Carol. Continue to help them, and especially help Violet to be able to get out and watch us, and continue to bless us and help us to share what we learned. In Yahushua's name we pray. Amen. Okay, chapter 2 of the appendix, page 420. Men and women, by indulging the appetite in eating rich and highly seasoned foods, especially flesh meats with rich gravies, and by using stimulating drinks as tea and coffee, create unnatural appetites. The system becomes fevered, the organs of digestion become injured, the mental faculties are beclouded, while the baser passions are excited and predominate over the nobler faculties. The appetite becomes more unnatural and more difficult of restraint. The circulation of the blood is not equalized and becomes impure. The whole system is deranged, and the demands of appetite become more unreasonable, craving exciting, hurtful things until it is thoroughly depraved. With many, the appetite clamors for the disgusting weed, tobacco, and ale. Oh, I wonder what the disgusting weed was.
Tobacco.
No, it's the comma there.
That's true.
An ale made powerful by poisonous, health-destroying mixtures. Many do not stop even here. Their debased appetites call for stronger drink, which has a still more benumbing influence upon the brain. Thus they give themselves up to every excess until appetite holds complete control over the reasoning faculties, and man, formed in the image of his Maker, debases himself lower than the beasts. Manhood and honor are alike sacrificed to appetite. It required time to benumb the sensibilities of the mind. It was done gradually but surely. The indulgence of the appetite in first eating food highly seasoned created a morbid appetite and prepared the way for every kind of indulgence until health and intellect were sacrificed to lust. Many have entered the marriage relation who have not acquired property and who have had no inheritance. They did not possess physical strength or mental energy to acquire property. It has been just such ones who have been in haste to marry and who have taken upon themselves responsibilities of which they had no just sense. They did not possess noble, elevated feelings and had no just idea of the duty of a husband and a father and what it would cost them to provide for the wants of a family. And they manifested no more propriety in the increase of their families than that shown in their business transactions. Those who are seriously deficient in business tact and who are the least qualified to get along in the world generally fill their houses with children, while men who have ability to acquire property generally have no more children than they can well provide for. Those who are not qualified to take care of themselves should not have children. It has been the case that the numerous offspring of these poor calculators are left to come up like the brutes. They are not suitably fed or clothed and do not receive physical or mental training, and there is nothing sacred in the word home to either parents or children. The marriage institution was designed of heaven to be a blessing to man, but in general sense it has been abused in such a manner as to make it a dreadful curse. Most men and women have acted in entering the marriage relation as though the only question for them to settle was whether they loved each other, but they should realize that a responsibility rests upon them in their marriage relations. Farther than this, they should consider whether their offspring will possess physical health and mental and moral strength, but few have moved with high motives and with elevated considerations that society had claims upon them, which they could not lightly throw off, that the weight of their family's influence would tell in the upward or downward scale. Society is composed of families, and heads of families are responsible for the molding of society. If those who choose to enter the marriage relation without due consideration were alone to be the sufferers, then evil would not be as great, and their sin would be comparatively small. But the misery arising from unhappy marriages is felt by the offspring of such unions. They have entailed upon them a life of living misery, and though innocent, suffer the consequences of their parents' inconsiderate course. Men and women have no right to follow impulse or blind passion in their marriage relation, and then bring innocent children into the world to realize from various causes that life has but little joy, but little happiness, and is therefore a burden. Children generally inherit the peculiar traits of character which the parents possess. And in addition to all this, many come up without any redeeming influence around them. They are too frequently huddled together in poverty and filth. With such surroundings and examples, what can be expected of the children when they come upon the stage of action, but that they will sink lower in the scale of moral worth than their parents, and their deficiencies in every respect be more apparent than theirs. Thus has this class perpetuated their deficiencies and cursed their posterity with poverty, imbecility, and degradation. These should not have married. At least they should not have brought innocent children into existence to share their misery and hand down their own deficiencies, with accumulating wretchedness from generation to generation, which is one great cause of the degeneracy of the race. If women of past generations had always moved from high considerations, realizing that future generations would be ennobled or debased by their course of action, they would have taken their stand that they could not unite their life interests with men who were cherishing unnatural appetites for alcoholic drinks and tobacco, which is a slow but sure and deadly poison, weakening the nervous system and debasing the noble faculties of the mind. If men would remain wedded to those vile habits, women should have left them to their life of single blessedness, to enjoy these companions of their choice. Women should not have considered themselves of so little value as to unite their destiny with men who had no control over their appetites, but whose principal happiness consisted in eating and drinking and gratifying their animal passions. Women have not always followed the dictates of reason instead of impulse. They have not felt in a high degree the responsibilities resting upon them to form such life connections as would not and stamp upon their offspring a low degree of morals and a passion to gratify debased appetites, at the expense of health and even life. Yahuwah will hold them accountable in a large degree for the physical health and moral characters thus transmitted to future generations. Men and women who have corrupted their own bodies by dissolute habits have also debased their intellects and destroyed the fine sensibilities of the soul. Very many of this class have married and left for an inheritance to their offspring the taints of their own physical debility and depraved morals, the gratification of animal passions, and gross sensuality have been the marked characters of the posterity, which have descended from generation to generation, increasing human misery to a fearful degree, and hastening the depreciation of the race. Men and women who have become sickly and diseased have often in their marriage connections selfishly thought only of their own happiness. They have not seriously considered the matter from the standpoint of noble, elevated principles, reasoning in regard to what they could expect of their posterity, but diminished energy of body and mind, which would not elevate society but sink it still lower. Sickly men have often won the affections of women apparently healthy, and because they loved each other, they felt themselves at perfect liberty to marry, neither considering that by their union the wife must be a sufferer, more or less because of the diseased husband. In many cases, the diseased husband improves in health, while the wife shares his disease. He lives very much upon her vitality, and she soon complains of failing health. He prolongs his days by shortening the days of his wife. Those who thus marry commit sin in lightly regarding health and life, given to them of Yahuwah to be used to his glory. But if those who thus enter the marriage relation were alone concerned, the sin would not be so great. Their offspring are compelled to be sufferers by disease transmitted to them. Thus disease has been perpetuated from generation to generation, and many charge all this weight of human misery upon Yahuwah, when their wrong course of action has brought the sure result. They have thrown upon society an enfeebled race, and done their part to deteriorate the race by rendering disease hereditary and thus accumulating human suffering. Another cause of the deficiency of the present generation in physical strength and moral worth is men and women uniting in marriage whose ages widely differ. It is frequently the case that the old men choose to marry young wives. By thus doing, the life of the husband has often been prolonged, while the wife has had to feel the want of that vitality which she has imparted to her aged husband. It has not been the duty of any woman to sacrifice life and health, even if she did love one much older than herself, and felt willing on her part to make such a sacrifice. She should have restrained her affections. She had considerations higher than her own interest to consult. She should consider if children be born to them, what would be their condition. It is still worse for young men to marry women considerably older than themselves. The offspring of such unions, in many cases where ages widely differ, have not well balanced minds. They have been deficient also in physical strength. In such families have frequently been manifested very peculiar and often painful traits of character. They often die prematurely, and those who reach maturity in many cases are deficient in physical and mental strength and moral worth.
Okay. The father is seldom prepared with his failing faculties to properly bring up his young family. These children have peculiar traits of character, which constantly need a counteracting influence, or they will go to a certain ruin. They are not educated aright. Their discipline has too often been of the fitful, impulsive kind by reason of his age. The father has been susceptible of changeable feelings. At one time, overindulgent, while at another he is unwarrantably severe. Everything in some such families is wrong, and domestic wretchedness is greatly increased. Thus, a class of beings have been thrown upon the world as a burden to society. Their parents were accountable in a great degree for the characters developed by their children, which are transmitted from generation to generation. Those who increase their number of children, when if they consulted reason, they must know that physical and mental weaknesses must be their inheritance, are transgressors of the last 6 precepts of Yahuwah's law, which specify the duty of man to his fellow man. They do their part in increasing the degeneracy of the race, in sinking society lower, thus injuring their neighbor. If Yahuwah thus regards the rights of neighbors, has he no care in regard to closer and more sacred relationships? If not a sparrow falls to the ground without his notice, will he be unmindful of the children born into the world, diseased physically and mentally, suffering in a greater or lesser degree all their lives? Will he not call parents to an account to whom he has given reasoning powers for putting these higher faculties in the background and becoming slaves to passion when, as the result, generations must bear the mark of their physical, mental, and moral deficiencies? In addition to the suffering they entail upon their children, they have no portion but poverty to leave to their pitiful flock. They cannot educate them, and many do not see the necessity, neither could they if they did. They find time to train them and instruct them and lessen as much as possible the wretched inheritance transmitted to them. Parents should not increase their families any faster than they know that their children can be well cared for and educated. A child in the mother's arms from year to year is great injustice to her. It lessens and often destroys social enjoyment and increases domestic wretchedness. It robs their children of that care, education, and happiness which parents should feel it their duty to bestow upon them. The husband violates the marriage vow and the duties enjoined upon him in the word of Yahuwah when he disregards the health and happiness of the wife by increasing her burdens and cares by numerous offspring. Husbands, love your wives, even as Yeshua also loved the church and gave himself for it. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as Yahuwah the church. We see this holy injunction almost wholly disregarded, even by professed Christians. Everywhere you may look, you will see pale, sickly, careworn, broken down, dispirited, discouraged women. They are generally overworked, with their vital energies exhausted by frequent childbearing. The world is filled with images of human beings who are of no worth to society. Many are deficient in intellect, and many who possess natural talents do not use them for any beneficial purpose. They are not cultivated, and the one great reason is children have been multiplied faster than they could be well trained, and have been left to come up much like the brutes. Children in this age are suffering with their parents, more or less the penalty of the violation of the laws of health. The course generally pursued with them from their infancy is in continual opposition to the laws of their being. They were compelled to receive a miserable inheritance of disease and debility before their birth, occasioned by the wrong habits of their parents, which will affect them in a greater or less degree through life. This bad state of things is made every way worse by parents continuing to follow a wrong course in the physical training of their children during their childhood. Parents manifest astonishing ignorance, indifference, and recklessness in regard to the physical health of their children, which often results in destroying the little vitality left, the abused infant, and consigns it to an early grave. You will frequently hear parents mourning over the providence of Yahuwah, which has torn their children from their embrace. Our Heavenly Father is too wise to err and too good to do us wrong. He has no delight in seeing his creatures suffer. Thousands have been ruined for life because parents have not acted in accordance with the laws of health. They have moved from impulse instead of following the dictates of sound judgment, constantly having in view the future well-being of their children. The first great object to be attained in the training of children is soundness of constitution, which will prepare the way in a great measure for mental and moral training. Physical and moral health are closely united. What an enormous weight of the responsibility rests upon parents when we consider the course pursued by them before the birth of their children has very much to do with the development of their character after their birth. Many children are left to come up with less attention from their parents than a good farmer devotes to his dumb animals. Fathers especially are often guilty of manifesting less care for wife and children than that shown to their cattle. A merciful farmer will take time and devote a special thought as to the best manner of managing his stock, and will be particular that his valuable horses shall not be overworked, overfed, or fed when heated, lest they be ruined. He will take time and care for his stock, lest they be injured by neglect, exposure, or any improper treatment, and his increasing young stock depreciate in value. He will observe regular periods for their eating, and will know the amount of work they can perform without injuring them. In order to accomplish this, he will provide them only the most healthful food in proper quantities and at stated periods. By thus following the dictates of reason, farmers are successful in preserving the strength of their beasts. If the interest of every father for his wife and children corresponded to that care manifested for his cattle, in that degree that their lives are more valuable than the dumb animals, there would be an entire reformation in every family, and human misery be far less. Great care should be manifested by parents in providing the most healthful articles of food for themselves and for their children, and in no case should they place before their children food which their reasons teaches them is not conducive to health, but which would fever the systems and derange the digestive organs. Parents do not study from cause to effect in regard to their children, as in the case of their dumb animals, and do not reason that to overwork, to eat after violent exercise, and when much exhausted and heated, will injure the health of human beings as well as the health of dumb animals, and will lay the foundation for a broken constitution in man as well as the beasts. Okay, Keith?
If parents or children eat frequently, irregularly, and in too great quantities, even of the most healthful food, it will injure the constitution. But in addition to this, if the food is of an improper quality and prepared with grease and indigestible spices, The result will be far more injurious. The digestive organs will be severely taxed, and exhausted nature will be left a poor chance to rest and recover strength, and the vital organs soon become impaired and break down. If care and regularity is considered needful for dumb animals, it is as much more essential for human beings formed in the image of their maker, as they are of more value than the dumb creation. The father, in many cases, exercises less reason and has less care for his wife and their offspring, but before the birth than he manifests for his cattle and young. The mother, in many cases, previous to the birth of her children, is permitted to toil early and late, heating her blood while preparing various unhealthy dishes of food to suit the perverted taste of her family and of visitors. Her strength should have been tenderly cherished. A preparation of healthy food would have been required, but about 1/2 of the expense and labor would have been far more nourishing. The mother, before the birth of her children, is often permitted to labor beyond her strength. Her burdens and cares are seldom lessened, and that period, which should be to her all others a time of rest, is one of fatigue, sadness, and gloom. By too great exertion on her part, she deprives her offsprings of that nutrition which nature has provided for it, and by heating her blood, she imparts to it a bad quality of blood. The offspring is robbed of its vitality, robbed of physical and mental strength. The father should study how to make the mother happy. He should not allow himself to come to his home with a clouded brow. If he is perplexed in business, he should not, unless it is absolutely necessary to counsel with his wife, trouble her with such matters. She has cares and trials of her own to bear, and she should be tenderly spared every needless burden. The mother too often meets with cold reserve from the father. If everything does not move off just as pleasantly as he could wish, he blames the wife and mother and seems indifferent to her cares and daily trials. Men who do this are working directly against their own interests and happiness. The mother becomes discouraged. Hope and cheerfulness depart from her. She goes about her work mechanically, knowing that it must be done, which soon debilitates physical and mental health. Children are born to them suffering with various disease, and God holds the parents accountable in a great degree, for it was their wrong habits which fashions disease upon their unborn children, under which they are compelled to suffer all through their lives. Some live but a short period with their load of debility. The mother anxiously watches over the life of her child and is weighed down with sorrow as she is compelled to close its eyes on death, and she often regards God as the author of all this affliction, when the parents in reality are the murderers of their own child. The father should bear in mind that the treatment of his wife before the birth of his offspring will materially affect the disposition of the mother during that period, and will have very much to do with the character developed by the child after its birth. Many fathers have been so anxious to obtain property fast that higher considerations have been sacrificed, and some men have been criminally neglectful of the mother and her offspring, and too frequently the lives of both have been sacrificed to the strong desire to accumulate wealth. Many do not immediately suffer this heavy penalty for their wrongdoing and are asleep as to the results of their course. The condition of the wife is sometimes no better than that of a slave, and sometimes she is equally guilty with the husband of squandering physical strength to obtain means to live fashionably. It is a crime for such to have children, for their offspring will often be deficient in physical, mental, and moral worth, and will bear the miserable, close, selfish impress of their parents, and the world will be cursed with their meanness. It is a duty of men and women to act with reason in regard to their labor. They should not exhaust their energies unnecessarily, for by doing this, they not only bring suffering upon themselves, but by their errors bring anxiety, weariness, and suffering upon those they love. What calls for such an amount of labor? Intemperance in eating and in drinking and desire for wealth have led to this intemperance and labor. If the appetite is controlled and that food only which is healthful is taken, there will be so great a saving of expense that men and women will not be compelled to labor beyond their strength and thus violate the laws of health. The desire of men and women to accumulate property is not sinful if in their efforts to attain their object, they do not forget God and transgress the least 6 principles of Jehovah, the last 6 principles of Jehovah, which dictate the duty of men to his fellow man, and place themselves in a position where it is possible for them to glorify God and their bodies and spirits, which are his. If in their haste to be rich, they overtax their energies and violate the laws of their being, they place themselves in a condition where they cannot render to God perfect service and are pursuing a course in sin. Property thus obtained is at an immense sacrifice. Hard labor and anxious care often make the father nervous, impatient, and exacting. He does not notice the tired look of his wife, who has labored with her feebler strength, just as hard as he has labored with his stronger energies. He suffers himself to be hurried with business, and through his anxiety to be rich, loses a great measure of sense of his obligation to his family, and does not measure aright his wife's power of endurance. He often enlarges his farm, requiring an increase of hired help, which necessarily increases the housework. The wife realizes every day that she is doing too much work for her strength, yet she toils on thinking the work must be done. She is continually reaching down into the future, drawing upon her future resources of strength, and is living upon borrowed capital. And at the period when she needs that strength, it is not at her command, and if she does not lose her life, her constitution is broken past recovery. If the father would become acquainted with physical law, he might better understand his obligations and his responsibilities. He would see that he has been guilty of almost murdering his children by suffering so many burdens to come upon the mother, compelling her to labor beyond her strength before her birth in order to obtain means to leave for them. They nurse these children through their suffering life and often lay them permanently in the grave, little realizing their wrong course has brought the sure result. How much better to have shielded the mother of his children from wearing labor and mental anxiety, and let the children inherit good constitutions and give them an opportunity to battle their way through life, not relying upon their father's property, but upon their own energetic strength. The experience thus obtained would be of more worth to them than houses and lands purchased at the expense of the health of mother and children. It seems perfectly natural for some men to be morose, selfish, exacting, and overbearing. They have never learned the lesson of self-control and will not restrain their unreasonable feelings. Let the consequences be what they may, such men will be repaid. by seeing their companions sickly and dispirited, and their children bearing the peculiarities of their own disagreeable traits of character. It is the duty of every married couple to studiously avoid marrying the feelings of each other. They should control every look and expression of fretfulness and passion. They should study each other's happiness in small matters as well in large, manifesting a tender thoughtfulness in acknowledging kind acts and the little courtesies of each other. These small things should not be neglected, for they are just as important to the happiness of man and wife as food is necessary to sustain physical strength. The father should encourage the wife and mother to lean upon his large affections, kind, cheerful, encouraging words from him, with whom she has entrusted her life happiness, will be more beneficial to her than any medicine. And the cheerful rays of light, sympathizing words will bring to the heart of the wife and mother, will reflect back their own cheering beams upon the heart of the father.
Okay, Marty?
The husband will frequently see his wife careworn and debilitated, growing prematurely old, in laboring to prepare food to suit the vivid some taste. He gratifies the appetite and will eat and drink those things which cost him much time and labor to prepare them for the table, and which have a tendency to make those who partake of these unhealthy things nervous and irritable. The wife and mother is seldom free from the headache, and the children are suffering the effects of eating unwholesome food, and there is a great lack of patience and affection with parents and children. All are sufferers together, for health has been sacrificed to lustful appetite. The offspring before its birth has transmitted to it disease and an unhealthy appetite, and the irritability, nervousness, and despondency manifested by the mother will mark the character of her child. In past generations, if mothers had informed themselves in regard to the laws of their being, they would have understood that their constitutional strength, as well as the tone of their morals and their mental faculties, would in a great measure be represented in their offspring. Their ignorance upon the subject where so much is involved is criminal. Many women never should have become mothers. Their blood was filled with whatever transmitted to them from their parents and increased by their gross manner of living. The intellect has been brought down and enslaved to serve the animal appetites, and children born of such parents have been poor sufferers and of but little use to society. It has been one of the greatest causes of degeneracy in generations back up to the present time, that wives and mothers who otherwise would have had a beneficial influence upon society, is raising the standard of morals, have been lost to society through multiplicity of home cares because of the fashionable, health-destroying manner of cooking, and also in consequence of too frequent child beating.
Very.
She, oh, yeah. Well, that was a blunder, huh?
Yeah.
She has been compelled to needless suffering. Her constitution has failed, and her intellect has become weakened by so great a drought upon her vital resources. Her offspring suffer her debility, and society has thrown down upon them a class poorly fitted through her inability to educate them to be of the best benefit. If these mothers had given birth to but few children, and if they had been careful to live upon such food as would preserve physical health and mental strength, so that the moral and intellectual might predominate over the animal, they could have so educated their children for usefulness as to have been bright ornaments to society. If parents in past generations had, with firmness of purpose, kept the body servant as to the mind and had not allowed the intellectuals to be enslaved by animal passions, there would be in this age a different order of beings upon the earth. And if the mother, before the birth of her offspring, had always possessed self-control, realizing that she was giving the stamp of character to future generations, the present state of society would not be so depreciated in character as in the present time.
I just want to make a comment about the food. She keeps talking about how bad the food was, but they didn't even have all this prepared food with all the chemicals and everything in it that we have today. What would she say about us today in our eating?
Exactly.
Every woman about to become a mother, whatever may be her surroundings, should encourage constantly a happy, cheerful, contented disposition, knowing that for all her efforts in the direction, she will be repaid tenfold in the physical as well as the moral character of her offspring. Nor is this all. She can by habit accustom herself to cheerful thinking and thus encourage a happy state of mind and cast a cheerful reflection of her own happiness of spirit upon her family and those with whom she associates. And in a very great degree will her physical health be improved. A force will be imparted to the life springs. The blood will not move sluggishly, as would be the cause of the cause if she were to yield to despondency and gloom. Her mental and moral health are invigorated by the buoyancy of her spirits. The power of the will can resist impressions of the mind and will prove a grand soother of the nerves. Excuse me. Children who are robbed of the vitality which they should have inherited of their parents should have the utmost care, but by close attention to the laws of their being, a much better condition of things can be established. The period in which the infant receives its nourishment from the mother is critical. Many mothers, while nursing their infant, have been permitted to over labor and to heat their blood in cooking, and the nursling has been seriously affected, not only with fervent nourishment from the mother's breast, but its blood has been poisoned by the unhealthy diet of the mother, which has furthered her whole system, thereby affecting the food of the infant. The infant will also be affected by the condition of the mother's mind if she is unhappy, easily agitated, irritable, giving vent to outbursts of passion. The nourishment the infant receives from its mother will be inflamed, often producing colic, spasms, and in some instances causing convulsions and fits. The character also of the child is more or less affected by the nature of the nourishment received from the mother. How important then that the mother, while nursing her infant, should preserve a happy state of mind, having the perfect control of her own spirit. But by this doing, the food of the child is not injured, and the calm, self-possessed course of the mother pursues in the treatment of her child has very much to do in molding the mind of the infant. If it is nervous and easily agitated, the mother's careful, unhurried manner will have a soothing and correcting influence, and the health of the infant can be very much improved.
Okay, Sandy?
Infants have been greatly abused by improper treatment. If it was fretful, it has generally been fed to keep it quiet, when in most cases the very reason of its fretfulness was because of its having received too much food, made injurious by the wrong habits of the mother. More food only made the matter worse, for its stomach was already overloaded. Children are generally brought up from the cradle to indulge the appetite and are taught that they live to eat. The mother does much toward the formation of the character of her children in their childhood. She can teach them to control the appetite, or she can teach them to indulge the appetite and become gluttons. The mother often arranges her plans to accomplish a certain amount through the day. And when the children trouble her, instead of taking time to soothe their little sorrows and divert them, something is given them to eat and keep them still, which answers a purpose for a short time, but eventually makes things worse. The children's stomachs are pressed with food when they had not the least want of food. All that was required was a little of the mother's time and attention, but she regarded her time altogether too precious to devote to the amusement of her children. Perhaps the arrangement of the house in a tasteful manner for visitors to praise and to have her food cooked in a fashionable way are her higher considerations than the happiness and health of her children. Intemperance in eating and in labor debilitates the parents, often making them nervous and disqualifying them to rightly discharge their duty to the children. 3 times a day, parents and children gather around the table loaded with a variety of fashionable foods. The merits of each dish has to be tested. Perhaps the mother has toiled till she was heated and exhausted and was not in a condition to take even the simplest food till she had first had her period of rest. The food she wearied herself in preparing was wholly unfit for her at any time, but especially taxes the digestive organs when the blood is heated and the system exhausted. Those who have thus persisted in violating the laws of their being have been compelled to pay the penalty at some period in their life. It's kind of harsh. There are ample reasons why there are so many nervous women in the world. Complaining of the dyspepsia, with its train of evils. The cause has been followed by the effects. It is impossible for intemperate persons to be patient. They must first reform bad habits, learn to live healthfully, and then it will not be difficult for them to be patient. Many do not seem to understand the relation the mind sustains to the body. If the system is deranged by improper food, the brain and nerves are affected, and slight things annoy those who are thus afflicted. Little difficulties are to them troubles mountains high. Persons thus situated are unfitted to properly train their children. Their life will be marked with extremes, sometimes very indulgent, at other times severe, censuring for trifles which deserve no notice. The mother frequently sends her children from her presence because she thinks she cannot endure the noise occasioned by their happy frolics. But with no mother's eye over them to approbate or disapprove at the right time, unhappy differences often arise. A word from the mother would set all right again. They soon become weary and desire change and go into the street for amusement. And pure, innocent-minded children are driven into bad company, and evil communications breathed into their ears corrupt their good manners. The mother often seems to be asleep to the interest of her children until she is painfully aroused by the exhibition of vice. The seeds of evil were sown in their young minds, promising an abundant harvest, and it is a marvel to her that her children are so prone to do wrong. Parents should begin in season to instill into infant minds good and correct principles. The mother should be with her children as much as possible and should sow precious seeds in their hearts. The mother's time belongs in a special manner to her children. They have a right to her time as no others can have. In many cases, mothers have neglected to discipline their children because it would require too much of their time, which time they think must be spent in the cooking department or in preparing their own clothing and that of their children, according to fashion, and to foster pride in their young hearts. In order to keep the restless children still, they have given them cake or candies almost any hour of the day, and their stomachs are crowded with hurtful things at irregular periods. Their pale faces testify to the fact that mothers are doing what they can to destroy the remaining life forces of their poor children. The digestive organs are constantly taxed and are not allowed periods of rest. The liver becomes inactive, the blood impure, and the children are sickly and irritable because they are real sufferers by intemperance, and it is impossible for them to exercise patience. I wonder if she's speaking to a particular couple of people or what, because this in general is like it goes to every mother, and that's not true, and it's kind of harsh. If you're reading it and don't know, you'll be like, goodness, lady, I'm doing the best I can. Parents wonder that children are so much more difficult to control than they used to be, when in most cases their own criminal management has made them so. The quality of food they bring upon their tables and encourage their children to eat is constantly exciting their animal passions and weakening the moral and intellectual faculties. Very many children are made miserable dyspeptics in their youth by the wrong course their parents have pursued toward them in childhood. Parents will be called to render an account to God for thus dealing with their children. Many parents do not give their children lessons in self-control. They indulge their appetite and form the habits of their children in their minds to eat and drink according to their desires. So will they be in the general habits of their youth. Their desires have not been restrained, and as they grow older, they will not only indulge in the common habits of intemperance, but they will still go further in indulgences. They will choose their own associates, although corrupt. They cannot endure restraint from their parents. They will give loose rein to their corrupt passions and have but little regard for purity or virtue. This is the reason why there is so little purity and moral worth among the youth of the present day, and is the great cause why men and women feel under so little obligation to render obedience to the law of God. Some parents have not control over themselves. They do not control their own morbid appetites and their passionate tempers. Therefore, they cannot educate their children in regard to the denial of their appetite and teach them self-control. I don't know. Put an awful lot of responsibility on the mother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there
where's any responsibility for the
Yeah.
dad?
there's a lot of people that have several kids and one is perfect and the others aren't, or vice versa. And it's, it's has a lot to do with a lot of things, but I can't just blame it on mom.
Yeah.
Many mothers feel that they have not time to instruct their children, and in order to get them out of the way and get rid of their noise and trouble, they send them to school. Well, the schoolroom is a hard place for children who have inherited enfeebled constitutions. Schoolrooms generally have not been constructed in reference to health, but in regard to cheapness. She's definitely talking about her time.
Yeah.
Our
They
Rooms,
take like they send them to school. By law, you have to.
the rooms have not been arranged so that they could be ventilated as they should have been without exposing the children to severe colds. And the seats have seldom been made so that the children would sit with ease and keep their little growing frames in a proper posture to ensure healthy action of the lungs and heart. Young children can grow into almost any shape and can, by the habits of proper exercise and positions of the body, obtain healthy forms. It is destructive to the health of life of young children for them to sit in the schoolroom upon hard, ill-formed benches from 3 to 5 hours a day, inhaling the impure air caused by many breaths. The weak lungs become infected. The brain, from which the nervous energy of the whole system is derived, becomes enfeebled by being called into active exercise before the strength of the mental organs is sufficiently matured to endure fatigue. I don't know.
That's very true. They put children in school way too young now and make them sit there. And children are not able to just sit at age 5 or 6. They need to be moving.
Their concentration is very short.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
But a lot of them do have good schools and
I haven't
I just-
seen any.
They might be fairly good, but they still make them sit, and that's not good for that age children. Sorry.
What she says about posture and everything else, nothing's changed
No,
in the schools. I mean, do we have more comfortable desks? I don't think so.
me neither.
no. You got to go to school. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
In the schoolroom, the foundation has been too surely laid for diseases of various kinds, but more especially the most delicate of all organs, the brain, has often been permanently injured by too great exercise. This has often caused inflammation, then dropsy of the head, and convulsions with the dreaded results. And the lives of many have been thus sacrificed by ambitious mothers. Of those children who have apparently had sufficient force of constitution to survive this treatment, there are very many who carry the effects of it through life. The nervous energy of the brain becomes so weakened that after they become to maturity, it is impossible for them to endure much mental exercise. The force of some of the delicate organs of the brain seems to be expanded. Okay, it's about 6, and I'm just like, I don't know, 'cause I keep thinking about myself, and I'm fine, and I went to school, and my son is fine, and other kids I know are fine, and it's like, I don't know who she's talking to back here, but maybe I know it was a lot different then, and I know that their air was worse inside places. I don't know, there's a lot of differences in their food and everything else. Maybe they didn't have the health that we do.
Because
The
I know
cleaning.
by law you have to go to school, but I do know
No, you
this.
don't.
When you
When
get
I-
in school,
There's no. there's no
Yeah, but
place
when
to-
I started school, kindergarten was optional. Because actually kindergarten was to get you used to playing with other kids.
Right.
But then it came to the place that in
kindergarten still is
kindergarten you
optional.
learn to the alphabet and numbers and like what you had used to learn in first grade. Now they send them to preschool, so they start school at 3 or 4 years old.
Exactly.
And what she's saying
That's-
about stretching their mental capacity, That's being done all the time now. I mean, you had, like you said, if you're not reading by first grade, you're way behind the curve.
Yeah, and that's way too young.
Yeah,
Their eyes aren't ready yet, anything. That's way too young for that.
Yeah, but like I say, it's changed so much because, like I say, you didn't have when I was started school, you could bypass kindergarten. Now they go to preschool.
yeah.
But it's still not law that you have to go to kindergarten.
Yeah,
They
well,
have-
I think going to preschool is just kind of to get them out of their hair, which is
Well, she
basically
said
what
that.
she's saying.
She said
It's
that.
not to get them
That's
out
what
of
I
their
say.
hair.
Basically,
Some
that's
people
what
have
she's
to work.
saying.
Yeah,
Some
that's,
people
they
have to
use
work, so
preschool.
we need to kind of be careful. Some people have to work and we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. They do what they have to do, so.
A lot of people have to work because they want better things. And what she's saying is you don't need all that better. It's better to be home with your children than to want the better
You can't
thing.
pay your rent, you have to, so we won't go there either. Everybody's in different situations. If you had money and could pay yours, that's great, but there are a lot of people that can't. They're on their own and just a lot of reasons. But anyway, we'll quit there and continue next week and hope the subject changes.
If you believe in Ellen White, this is inspired. I guess if you don't believe it, you don't believe that she was inspired. I don't know.
Well, I never went to kindergarten when I was a kid, and I never started school from first grade until I was 8 years old.
Mhm.
That's why I was the oldest kid in the classroom all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, our youngest daughter, we homeschooled. We started her at age 8 and she graduated high school at age 16.
Yeah, well, I started in first grade, but I started at 6 years old.
But
And
that just shows you how much wasted time
Kindergarten,
they're at the
and he
school.
Waited years early. He skipped 2 classes and he started in kindergarten. So, you know, everything's different, everybody's different, but I just think she was speaking awful serious to things that, you know, some people are like, wait a minute. There are some people that, yes, this fits very well because they do not take care of themselves or their children.
Well, you
But-
know, there was a time though that school was not required way
Right.
back then.
That's correct.
Yeah. And she wasn't talking to everybody, but she was talking here to the people that needed to hear it.
She's
Yeah.
talking in generalities that diet obviously has a big effect,
Yeah.
you know.
Back then, I'm
Very
sure
good
it did.
effect.
And that diet is for everybody because
Could we have been smarter if we had eaten better as children?
maybe
Possibly.
who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
moral
one thing's for-
character.
One
know.
thing's for sure, diet controls our health
Very much so. Yeah.
totally.
And
Yeah.
when she was talking about pregnant women back then, there was a lot of the women were expected to, on farms to go out and, work.
Yeah.
Right.
If
Yeah.
they're not working, they're preparing the meals all day and working in the house.
Yeah.
And
And
it's true, Barbara, because their food back there was, you get, today there's a lot of food that has no nutritional value.
Oh, so much. Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, like I said, I think RFK might have read this chapter. You know, and that's why we're
Mm.
in the best we're in with processed foods. You know, like Barb said, what would she say now? You know, with all the processed foods,
To get them out of your house.
fruits and vegetables and nuts, you
Yeah.
know.
Some of those aren't even any good anymore. It's just getting hard. You gotta do everything your own, but
Oh, yeah. Well, we aren't getting all the minerals and everything they used to get from the foods that's grown. It just,
Yeah.
and then if you
our
try and
ground
take
is
it, you don't know if
depleted.
those are good either. Okay,
Yeah.
Keith, you want to have closing prayer?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you today for these messages that you have given us. Help us to prepare our characters so we can be prepared with your soon coming. What a glorious day that will be. In your name, amen.
Okay, we will see everybody on Sabbath. We have Brent and actually Sean Hoffman.
Oh, good.
Sean must be back from
Yeah, haven't
traveling.
seen him for a while.
Fair circuit is over for now.
Whoops.